Mark Brewer is sitting right here, in fact, the chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party in our Gillespie Group storefront studio on the Avenue of Michigan. Terrific to see you, sir.
Good morning.
Do you think that in tonight's last Republican debate, there will be some sort of touchdown pass thrown, some sort of long bomb, something that separates the men from the boys?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what their final approach is tonight because they got 3 weeks left.
Yeah,
and
3 weeks from today.
It still seems to be a pretty muddled race, looking at the polling out there. And so I think each of these candidates will try to find some way to differentiate themselves one final time in this kind of format.
What about on the Democratic side? Have you heard any gossip about running mates for either Verge Bernero or Speaker Dillon?
That's just it, gossip. We've had on our side of the aisle in the past a couple of times where Democratic candidates have named a running mate before the primary. Mm-hmm. Larry Owen did it back in 98. David Bonnier did it back in 2002. And so that always leads to speculation. Will either Speaker Dillon or Mayor Bernero do the same thing?
If nothing else, it would get you some publicity going down the stretch here, too, right?
That's true. And it brings attention to the race. So, again, lots of speculation, but nothing concrete.
Could you share some of the speculation? Any
really,
rumblings?
No, it's really talking about who would be a good complement to both of them in terms of diversity on the ticket, for example, maybe a woman, for example. It's important to us as a party to have a diverse ticket, so perhaps an African-American running mate for either of them. So that's the kind of speculation, but no names.
Representative Alvin Wheeler-Smith broke for Verge Bernero yesterday. She was a candidate for governor at one time. Did it surprise you that she decided to back the mayor?
No. She indicated when she got out of the race that she didn't want to divide what she believed was the progressive vote. I got to be very careful, Michael Patrick, because I am neutral.
Yes.
So I think that's what her move was at that time, to get out of the race so that she and Mayor Bernero didn't divide that part of the vote in our party. And so that was no surprise to me at all that she endorsed him yesterday.
What about, how important is that Archer endorsement?
As
would
with all endorsements,
he wouldn't run with Speaker
Dillon,
Dillon, would he?
I mean, Dennis Archer is very well respected in our party. And I think it can have an influence on some folks. It depends on how widely known it's going to be. Is Dennis Archer going to get out and campaign for Andy Dillon? I mean, again, these are the questions you all ask about endorsements. What resources does it bring to the race?
Well, if Dennis Archer were going to campaign, he probably should have done it for himself, wouldn't you say?
He'd have been a great candidate for governor.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that he's not in this field. And that's now no disrespect to either of our fine candidates, but Dennis Archer would have been a great candidate for governor.
I wonder which candidates look back now, people who thought about getting in the race and said, geez, if I'd known it was going to go on that way, I should have run. On both sides. I know a couple.
Oh, sure. There's always second guessing and looking back on what could have been. But again, you've got to give credit to folks on both sides of the aisle. I say this in a bipartisan way, who are willing to step up and put themselves out there and say, give me a shot at this. I'm willing to try. Here are my ideas, and put themselves out there for the voter.
What do you think John Cherry says when he looks at this? He said, this is why I got out? 70% undecided at 3 weeks before the primary?
I've not talked to John Cherry about that specifically, but John is a very decisive person, and I think he's very comfortable with the decision he made, whether people agree with it now or they're second-guessing now. John thinks things through very thoroughly, and he's very decisive, and I don't think he has any regrets or second-guessing of himself.
What did you make? I know you've been listening. What did you make of this Mort Zuckerman 45% approval rating for the president coming into Michigan this week?
Well, I think Zuckerman has really gone too much to the one extreme. I think people need to look back about where we were when Barack Obama became president. We were losing hundreds of thousands of jobs a month, literally. We've turned that around now. We're not where we need to be, but we're starting to gain jobs again. We had 40 million Americans without health insurance. That problem is on its way to being solved. We had just suffered the greatest financial meltdown since the Great Depression. As soon as this week, that problem may be solved with this historic Wall Street reform. So the president has done exactly what he promised he would do, and he's had to tackle some huge unexpected problems along the way, like the BP oil spill and everything else like that. And when you make tough decisions and make that kind of change, you're going to take some hits politically. But I think he's on the right path. I think he's doing the right thing. And people need to think back. Do we want to go back to where we were under George Bush? Do we want to give control of government, either at the state level or at the federal level, back to the same people who got us into this mess? That'll be one of the choices the voters will face this fall.
Ron Weiser was with us earlier, the Republican chair. He didn't really like the idea that Mark Halperin has written about in Time magazine, that the Republican Party doesn't have a flesh and blood leader at the moment.
I think that's right. And if anything, they're really, I think, led by demagogues, people like Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck, Sarah Palin. That fringe of the party, I think, is really the face of the Republican Party. And that is going to be a problem for them in the fall. When you've got these extreme candidates like Sharon Angle, who's the Republican candidate for Senate out in Nevada, who thinks we should get rid of Social Security, get rid of Medicare, and who's said some other very extreme things. People like Rand Paul, the Republican nominee for Senate down in Kentucky, who says we don't need anti-discrimination laws. We should just let the private sector discriminate and not outlaw that. I mean, people have really got some very extreme views, and that is the face of the Republican Party this year.
Thank you very much for being with us and showing your face on TV on Fox 47 and in our Gillespie Group storefront studio.
Glad to be with you, Michael Patrick.
Mark Brewer, chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party. We'll all be watching tonight the Republican debate to see if there's a touchdown pass attempted. 3 weeks from the primary today. Television viewers, thanks for being with us. Radio listeners, we got another hour of this right here. Adios and bye.